Hi, I'm Lisa Renee Jones, and I am here with
Crissy and Mags,
and they run latersbaby.net that is all about the sizzling 50 Shades of Grey, which many of you know I am a huge fan of, and of course I write a sexy series myself, the Inside Out series. So ladies, I have to say, you look very prim and proper. So how did this obsession with 50 Shades that you guys have come about?
Well, my sister, who hadn't read the book, talked me into reading it, and then I talked Mags into reading it while we were at work. And then we were talking about it an awful lot, so I said, I think we need to find another outlet for this. Let's start a blog.
And how long ago was that?
Just over 2 years ago.
Yeah, we hit our anniversary maybe a little month and a half ago.
April 30th?
Yeah.
April 30th.
So when you were reading the books, obviously they're very sexy. Had the craze started when you first read it and everybody was talking about it?
Not quite.
Yeah, I think we were right before, and then all of a sudden it just took off.
So when you started talking about it, telling people about it, what was the reaction that people said? You said there's a super sexy book where people like, oh, no, or...
Well, we talked to a couple of people at work into reading it, and they all seemed to like it. And so they started talking about it too, so it just kind of snowballed. Yeah.
Well, so, you know, I think it's really interesting that people talk about these books and they talk about the sex all the time. But to me, okay, so I'm an author and I've written erotic novels, I write erotic novels, but there had been a lot of erotic novels before 50 Shades. And I've heard a lot of writers say things like, you know, it's just another erotic novel, I don't get it, why it's like ridiculous that it's taken off like this. But I didn't think that. I actually, when I started reading it, I immediately connected with the characters. I thought, wow, this author's really great at making me connect with the characters. But then the thing that got me was that there was this love story. It's, to me, about this man that's damaged and this innocent woman that, you know, heals him. Is that, I mean, what, was it the sex that drew you in at first and then the love story? Or do you think it was a love story? What do you think it is that makes these books so exciting to people?
You know, I think that, you know, of course the sex is great and it's hot, but for me, and I know for a lot of other people, it's a romance story. It's a story of love and how love can endure and can heal. And I think that that's kind of what drew me in, and you know, the love story, and you know, sex is there, and it's great.
Well, to me, sex is a natural part of falling in love. And I always say, if you don't have really hot sex when you first meet, you are screwed at 20 years. You are not going to be having good sex. And you better be really at it at the beginning. I mean, seriously. Because, you know, there's things that are going on in real life, and, you know, if you don't have that spark to start with. But, so I'm always shocked when people are so appalled, like sex is this horrible thing, when sex is part of falling in love in relationships, you know. But what about you? What drew you to them, do you think?
You know, before I read it, I looked it up, and there wasn't much on the internet at that time, so I knew it was Twilight fan fiction, and I think I saw some little hint about it being kinky. And as I was reading it, I'm like, what's going on here? And I just got really curious as to what was going on. So even though I was kind of like hesitant about it, I wanted to see these two unlikely pair come together and work it out. So it was definitely trying to figure out what they were doing. The sex was a nice bonus.
Yeah. Well, that's a question. So had you read any erotic novels before this, or was this your first erotic novel?
This was my first erotic novel.
So this introduced you.
Yeah, but I'd read a lot of romance before, but lighter stuff.
And what about you?
This wasn't my first, but it was my first where I felt like you were being drawn into the story. And into the characters' lives, rather than it just being all sex. That was really the first book that was like, okay, this is a love story.
You know, I really didn't think there was that much sex. I mean, when you compare it to other erotic novels that were on the market at that point, there was a lot of talking about sex, which can be very erotic in itself. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think there was that much sex, really. And that's why, okay, so let's talk about the movie. Okay. People are constantly talking about it has to be super sexy. It has to be that NC-17, blah, 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 blah. And my thing about that is that if you turn it into a porn flick, to me, my biggest fear is you lose the love story. And I don't even know if people really understand that they've connected to the love story. I think that they might be shocked if it was just sex to realize that it wasn't the sex that drew them in. That's just what everybody talks about.
Yes.
I mean, what are y'all's thoughts on what needs to be in the movie to make it, lovable by the fans?
You have to have the romance, the story. You have to show how they meet and how they work it out. And you definitely have to have some of the sex because it's part of the story.
But how hot is the question? What do you think is going to ruin it, or what do you think? What would disappoint you if it was? You know what I'm saying? How hot do you expect it to be?
I think. I'm sorry.
You can think. Go ahead.
I think that's a rarity for me. I think that they're definitely have to have the first time, I think, especially when she gets introduced to the room, and Christian finds out that she's a virgin, and it definitely have to have that first scene. But a lot of it can be done. A lot of the other scenes that are in the book can be done tastefully. A lot of different cutaways. I don't think every instance of sex in the
sex.
I mean, it is the hottest, but there's just so many different things that can just be cut out and still the story is there. I'm trying to think specifically which ones.
Well, I don't know if it's even about cutting out the scenes as much as doing them in a really classy, sexy way that's not a porn way. And I wonder if some of the people are screaming that they want that NC-17 kind of sex really understand that NC-17 kind of sex is Cinemax at night kind of sex.
Yeah.
And is that what we want this to be? I don't think so. Not me.
No, I mean, if I wanted to watch porn, I'd get a porn. I love the story not just for the sex, but for the characters. So, but because the sex moves the story, you have to have it.
I agree. Yeah.
But you can do it tastefully. Different angles. You can combine some scenes so that there's not quite so much of it in there, and just go with sort of some of the highlights of it. I'm thinking like the bathtub scene. You don't necessarily need to have that in there.
Yeah, that would be a little
graphic.
Yeah.
But like the first time they're together, it's while it's not very romantic of Christian, it's his first attempt at it. So there is sort of a romance to it.
Yeah, I think that's part of his growth. How he goes from there, it's really appreciated. How he goes from there to where he goes with her.
Yes.
That's part. If you don't understand where he started, how do you appreciate where he goes?
Yes.
So I agree, but I definitely think. Yeah, if they were to graphically do the bathtub scene, which I'm sure some fans, and we'll hear from some of the fans, that some fans hope that that'll be there, but I personally hope that they don't graphically do that scene.
Right, I don't think that scene is necessary in the moving of the story like the first time they're together.
And I prefer they not do the tampon scene after, just saying.
I would agree.
I'm glad you're the one that brought the subject.
That is the only scene I did not like in the book.
Yes,
so I'll just say, I'm sorry, EL, but that is the only scene.
I've gotten that feedback from a lot of other fans.
But you know what? In every book and every movie and everything you do, there's something you don't like. That's the only thing in the books I didn't like. So, you know what? I mean, there's no possible way that you can not have something that somebody doesn't, but I would prefer that.
You can't please everybody all the time.
Yeah. And I go back to when people say that what makes it so special, that I immediately felt bonded. And I know some people felt more bonded to Christian than Anastasia, but it was her that I immediately was bonded to because it's her point of view. And I don't know, I was immediately drawn into her point of view. I actually listened on audio. Have you listened to the audio?
I have not listened to audio.
Oh, do. It's very good on audio. Yeah, I love the reader. She really made it come to life for me. And that sometimes a bad reader can run a book, but she's very good. Yeah, and it makes you feel kind of like you get a glimpse at the movie because it's kind of, it's acted out. And
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of people have told me I should listen to it, but I'm always listening to something else. It's hard to find time for everything in life.
It is. But I think that if you get the chance, you'll definitely, I would highly recommend it to people. And sometimes if people aren't big readers and they haven't experienced it yet, it's a great way while you're doing dishes or laundry to, you know.
Yes, a lot of fans have actually said they listen to it, and after they read it, now they listen to it when they're doing chores around the house, just so they can get their little bit of it, you know, while they're taking care of stuff.
Well, tell me about, okay, so you have your website, and you have Facebook and Twitter, and, you know, kind of what do you do with fans, and what can fans find with you, and how fun has that been, and how has it grown, and everything?
I'll take this one. It's actually been really amusing. On Twitter is where I think we connect with the most people, and I have traveled to London, Australia, and South Africa, and met with fans there.
How did that happen, though?
I just said I'm going to Australia, and a girl named Nellie's like, we need to get together. So we got together for a day, and we went through Bondi Beach and did a bunch of stuff in Sydney together. In London, I met up with Vanessa, who helps me guests on my podcast that I do. And we spent a day doing Harry Potter stuff. And then in South Africa, again, I said I was going to South Africa, and somebody was like, are you going to be in Johannesburg? Because I'm here, and you can come and stay with me. And you know, we spent like a day and a half together, went to the Apartheid Museum, had dinner, and just, you know, it's just great getting to know people in different parts of the world that I never would have met otherwise.
So these books have really changed your life because they've made you, you know, live some experiences that you wouldn't have in the past. They encouraged you to do that.
Absolutely.
And how has it affected you, and what's it been like for you?
For me, it's been fun watching Crissy just.
You haven't gone travel?
No, I have not traveled widely since our blog has been up, but it's, you know, I started Twitter later than Crissy. Crissy jumped on Twitter like
Day one.
Yeah, like day one, and she's the more technology savvy person, and I'm a little bit more old school.
I can break something if I just touch it.
Yeah. So you know, it took me a little bit to realize, you know, how Twitter worked, and you know, just how easy it was to be able to go back and forth and to interact with people, and it's been very interesting. A couple of times I tweeted from Crissy's account by mistake because it was originally just the Latest Baby account, and she, you know, she was the one who was always tweeting, so she had all these tweets, and you can tell who's tweeting. Crissy would text me and say, I think you tweeted from my account. I erased it. I said, okay.
I don't like the way you tweet.
Because people are asking me about something I don't know anything about.
Yeah. So, you know, it's we're definitely two different personalities, but I think we just kind of, you know, we definitely look at things a little bit differently, and we kind of just, you know, differently and the same. Sometimes our minds are.
Our minds work differently, but they somehow end up in the same place.
Yeah.
So it's nice, like when we're brainstorming, whether a giveaway, a blog post, what to do for Christian's birthday, you know, whatever it is.
That's cool. Christian's birthday.
Yes, it's coming up in June.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Well, now you know June 18th.
Yes, I do.
So,
June 18th, everyone.
Yes.
Birthday cake. Okay, so what is the craziest reactions you've ever had from fans, like, or non-fans?
the non-fans are easier.
Okay, non-fans.
I've gotten emails about how I'm a bad person and I'm going to hell and how could I, you know.
We're going to hell together.
Yes. And then apparently all the cool people will be there, so it's okay.
That's right, all those cool people.
You know what? I say if we're going to hell, I gotta go all the way.
So it's same for you?
Yeah, we've gotten those emails. We've just a lot of insistence on characters and who should play this and who should play that, and this is why this person should be should be this character.
People got very angry
with
it.
Very insistent, and I think it's great to have that passion, because hey, listen, there's a lot of passion that goes along with these things, but you know, the fans are great. They, you know, they seem to roll with everything, you know, with the punches. Not that there's many punches, but you know, they're just they're a great group of people.
So what do you guys think about the casting?
So when they announced Charlie Hunnam, I was a little bit skeptical, but the more I learned about him, the more I liked him.
You don't watch SOA?
I did not. I watched a few episodes and I liked him in it, but it's not my style of show. It's more
I'll
like
just tell you,
Mags.
the first few episodes are very hard to watch, but if you keep driving through it, you will get obsessed.
Yes,
okay.
I do watch the show. I loved Charlie Hunnam from the very beginning, even before who was named Christian. So I was happy when he was cast, and you know, when he stepped back and said, "Well, I can't do it," or whatever the situation was. You know, I think Jamie's great.
I'm secretly a little happy about Charlie because you know a lot of fans hope he gets cast as Chris Merritt in the Inside Out series.
Oh.
And he was off the table when I was in LA chatting with them about it. And I was like, oh, I hope they get Charlie. But now, who knows? SOA is ending.
No.
Charlie's free.
Timing is everything.
I could absolutely see him as Chris
He
Merritt.
would be a really good
Yes.
Chris Merritt. And we know he has no problem with nudity.
He
I
does
like
not,
that in an
and
actor.
yeah.
In a Charlie.
Yes.
I don't mind his nudity either.
But so you like though the replacement choice?
I
Yeah.
think he's a great choice.
I think Jamie is, I think Charlie sort of showed more the rugged side of Christian, but I think Jamie shows more the refined side of him. So I think they would have both played the part a little bit differently. But I think the side that Jamie will play, I think, is more appropriate for, I think, what the film they're trying to make.
And what about Dakota?
Dakota, you know, she gets the most flack these days.
She really does, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Poor thing.
And I wouldn't say she's exactly what I pictured when I was picturing Anna, but I really liked her. The little bits of acting that I've seen, I actually just watched an episode of Ben and Kate the other day. She's actually a really good actor. I think she can really pull off this part.
You know, I think people forget, and I know you guys watched my casting video, I did, but people forget, or maybe they don't know, that a really great actor can be so many things that you don't think that they can be. It is amazing. And so I think that, you know, obviously they've done test screens for them, they know what they can do, and I'm excited to see what they both will do. I think they'll be great, and they both are so passionate about the roles. And I hope fans that have been resistant will truly give them a shot, especially Dakota. I think she'll probably surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm hoping once like the trailer comes out, that people will see that she did take on the role and she did portray it. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like it because you can't please everybody, but I think once some film comes out showing her, I think she'll grow on people. It's happened with every other film, you know, especially who played Finnick in The Hunger Games. I can't remember, but yeah. But I know he got a lot of flack, and everybody loves him now. Haven't heard a bad thing since. So.
Well, a lot of people don't remember, but when Daniel Craig got cast as 007, there was fury.
Yes.
Yes.
Fury.
Yes.
A blonde James Bond, and he was not James Bond. And come on, he's one of the most beloved James Bonds ever.
I love his James Bond.
He is great. I mean, especially when he first started, it was like, wow, he just made James Bond more sexy. I mean, you know, he owned that role. I think that people, that's where they don't realize, no, they might not seem like your first impression, but they can own it. So, I mean, look at Matthew McConaughey. He just played a role, lost all that weight, played the role that he, you know, won awards for. That is not who you thought Matthew McConaughey was in all of his movies where he played the hot boyfriend over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, give him a chance is what I say. So, okay, so I'm going to end this with vloggers, yes or no?
I'll say yes.
I'm a definite yes.
Yes. Spankings, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What else, ladies? What do you think is sexy?
Oh.
Come on. What's your sexiest scene in the books? We'll end on that.
Oh wow.
That's an easy one, the elevator scene
Oh, I like
in the
that.
Columbia Tower.
My favorite sexiest scene is actually a scene in one of the later books, the R8 scene.
Oh, in the car.
Yeah, in the car. That's
Okay, so we're going to end on...
Oh wait, what about yours?
Oh, gosh. I think the elevator scene, too.
Yeah.
I like that elevator scene. So, okay, everyone. So, 50 Shades of Grey, we say that it is super sexy. And if you haven't read it, where have you been? And it's a love story, so don't be intimidated. And we're going to leave you with all the information for how to find these ladies, because they can introduce you to spankings, floggers, and more. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
thanks.